Welcome to another edition of Gospel Entrepreneurs in partnership with UCB. And I'm thrilled to have an amazing guest with me today, Lara. And she's got a really fascinating journey of what's happened in her life. We're going to learn a little bit about her. But I'm thrilled that you're able to join me today from London, Lara.
Oh, thank you, Roy. Thank you. It's very lovely to be on your program. Thank you for asking me. I feel very flattered and honoured. So thank you.
You're in London, but you don't live in London. You live in the north, don't you?
I live between Leeds and York, yes, but I come to London quite a bit because my business is in London. So I come probably twice a month and I love it because I catch up with old friends and it's where I spent a lot of time when I was younger. So yes, I feel very blessed to be able to have the best of both worlds.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about yourself. People won't necessarily know you, but it'd be great to get a bit of a background as to who they're listening to. So give us a bit of your context, your story. That would be great.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I'm in my late 50s. I'm married to a wonderful man, live in Yorkshire. We've been married 30 years. I feel very blessed with him. I've got 3 lovely children. I set up my own business in my early 20s, mostly probably because I was unemployable and I was very bad at working for other people, which I think is the case with a lot of entrepreneurs, probably. I grew up in a very political family, lots of politicians in my family. My grandmother was the youngest woman MP for Northern Ireland, and I grew up in London, and my dad actually was in charge of the Small Business Bureau, which he promoted small businesses. So it was quite normal for me growing up to see people start businesses and stuff. So I think in my 20s, I look back on it now, it was quite a big thing starting my own business, but I didn't think of it so much at the time.
And your faith journey within that, would you say you were a Christian at that point? Where were you at in that scenario?
So I went to a boarding school and we had an amazing chaplain at school who I was very, very fond of. And he was quite high church. He was Church of England, but quite high Church of England. We called him Father Tate. And I was very fond of him, and I got made head sacristan at school, which was a really lovely job where you got to serve at the altar and do all the bread and wine and all the rest of it. And I did very much believe in God then, but then I hit London in my late teens and my early 20s, little slightly, it went on the back burner. And then in my 20s, my brother became a sort of Christian, and he would have called it at the time like born again, evangelical and whatever. And I thought I just thought it was just weird. And I slightly turned my back even more. And then I remember he invited me down to the Isle of Wight, bearing in mind he was 8 years younger and he went down. We had a cottage in the Isle of Wight and we went down. And I remember slightly trying to shock all his Christian friends by swearing and being quite cool, just thinking, I'm really not into all this. It's probably all a bit weird and all the rest of it. And the more I did that, the more I suddenly realized that actually they were all really quite normal and lovely people. And that sort of reignited my Christian faith. And then I joined a church in London, St. James the Less, which had an amazing congregation. And again, a very inspiring vicar called Jeremy Crosby, who I loved. And I joined a home group and we did Bible studies. And I really, really loved all that and was quite on fire then. And
just to put that in context, your brother is quite a character, isn't it? Your brother is Bear Grylls, is that right?
My brother is Bear Grylls. He's 8 years younger. And yeah, I'm super proud of him. He's done an amazing job and been a brilliant role model to so many people. So yeah, that's him. I know, extraordinary.
Extraordinary. So you're now back in the faith. You're part of a church community, but you're also in the process of starting a business.
Yes, I started my business during this time, which I think was probably very helpful, having a faith, because it does give you an inner confidence, I think, that you're not on your own. So despite, my brother used to call them dream stealers. He always used to say there's lots of people in life who try and steal your dreams, and he's right. So people going, do you realize what it's like to run your own business? You'll never have a minute to yourself. You'll never be able to do all the fun things. You'll be working 24 hours a day. But I didn't see it like that. I just saw it as freedom. I hated having to answer to somebody. And before I'd worked for a PR agency and I knew I could do it. And I hadn't thought necessarily of working for myself. And if I'm honest, it was purely that I wanted more freedom that I set up on my own. I went freelance and thought, well, if that's working for yourself, great. But then it quickly became clear that I had to employ people And it grew like that. It wasn't like I started employing people. It was only because it grew.
And initially, because you were working for someone else, and then you thought, hey, I think I could do this. And that was when you made a transition, wasn't it, Laura?
Yes. So basically, I was working for someone else. I wasn't really enjoying it. The more successful I was being within her company, the more she was slightly trying to say, oh, you've had an extra 5 minutes for lunch and what are you doing today and all the rest of it. And I felt like saying, I'm bringing in all this business. I don't need you on my back all the time and all the rest of it. And that's when I decided to go freelance purely because I wanted freedom. Maybe a little bit arrogant looking back on it, but I just thought I don't need this. And I didn't want that. And I just thought life's too short. I want to enjoy my 20s and I don't want to be working for someone else.
And that was an extremely fruitful time and the entrepreneurial gift flourished. PR is a massive industry and quite challenging, I would imagine. And being a Christian in that context, even more so. Is that not the case?
So it's the 80s, no, early 90s. We were just about to go into recession then, and lots of people saying you're mad and don't do it and all the rest of it. And I'd been lucky. My late grandmother had left all the grandchildren, I think £5,000 or £6,000. Yeah. So I decided to invest that and to start my own business, which I thought was a sensible thing to do. Yeah, it was a great time in PR. Looking back on it then, it was a really fun time. There was a lot more lunches out and parties and chatting to people. It was none of this sort of Zoom stuff and people hiding behind mobile phones. We didn't have mobile phones or anything in those days, or emails even. I just remember licking and sending out press releases with envelopes and yeah, it was funny.
And so you're now operating, it's your own company with someone else, and then something happened. What? Talk us through what happened in that process.
I was running the business remotely and I then sold out half the business to a partner. Well, 30%, I had 70%. And after about a year, we decided that we needed to tighten up the finances and have someone really efficient. We both interviewed and employed this person. She convinced us that she was a fully trained accountant, but she was a mother with small children and all she wanted to do was have a nice job. So basically convinced us that what we were getting for our money was amazing because she was a fully trained accountant and we were essentially only looking for a bookkeeper. And so she came into work for us and I'd never had such a gut feeling that someone was not what she said she was. And I then said to my partner, I'm not sure about her. And she kept saying to me, no, it's just you've got a character clash. She's really good. We're really lucky to have her and all the rest of it. And what I didn't know was that behind my back, this lady was saying to my partner, oh, Lara's living in Yorkshire. She's got small children. Her heart's not in the business. She leads a chaotic life. And she was basically slightly trying to turn Jane against me. Actually, Jane and me were very close. So she didn't actually turn her against me, but Jane did begin to think that she could do better without me. I then at the time wasn't enjoying it because I was feeling stressed by this woman who was stressing me out. I then asked Jane if she wanted to buy me out. So she bought me out and I then left the business totally. My children were small then and I had no percentage in the business at all. And for 5 years, I had nothing to do with it at all. I then went to train to be a tennis coach, which was my passion at the time. I love tennis. I've always loved tennis, still do, which actually worked quite well when the children were little. But there was a bit of me which missed the cut and thrust of like the PR world, the creative world, all the rest of it. And after about 5 years, I rang Jane up because I had a goddaughter who wanted to do work experience in PR. And she said, I can't believe that you've rung today of all days because I was about to ring you to tell you that I was about to put the company into liquidation. And I said, what? Because I'd been like looking on their website and they had really good clients and it looked like they were doing really well. And she said, yes, it turned out you were absolutely right. They had a VAT inspection and the VAT people came in and discovered that she'd swindled the tax man out of £250,000.
Wow.
And Jane had no idea because she'd given her complete control of the books and the money. So she was just naive. But anyway, that evening, my husband came home from work and we were chatting and I said, you'll never guess. And I told him the story. And he said, well, why don't you start a new business and have all the clients back? And I went, I couldn't do that. I said, I haven't done it for 5 years. I think I've been out of the business too long and blah, blah, blah. But then I thought about it all night and I prayed about it. And I just thought, gosh, maybe I could. And suddenly this entrepreneurial spirit lit up in me again. And I rang Jane the next day and I said, how would you feel if I set up a new business? I want nothing to do with the old business. And I haven't had anything to do with it for 5 years. But I said, if I started a new PR business and offered you the job as managing director, what would you say? And she said, oh my goodness, you'd be my guardian angel. I was about to go and look for a job in Tesco's. And thank you so much. Amazing, amazing. So we set up a new business. We interviewed for staff. Some of the old staff came back and we had some really good clients. And yeah, the reincarnation of my PR company then happened in 2008, I think it was. Yeah, 2008.
Which is amazing, and it continues to flourish. But then there was a bit of a crisis of faith during COVID, wasn't there? Obviously, you're now running this business. And where's your faith in this journey?
When I left London, where I was like with a fully fired up church and I was very much part of a sort of Christian community. And then I was busy having children and living in Yorkshire. I never quite found a spiritual home. I used to say my prayers occasionally, but I didn't really find a spiritual home. And during COVID, through all the madness of all of that, I then met up with two amazing Christian people, Lara, who I know has been on this podcast, and a lovely lady called Victoria Neville, both of who are now published authors, actually. And I met up with them, and once a week we used to say prayers, and it was just incredible. And I literally just reignited my faith through all the COVID rubbish.
Which is amazing that COVID provoked that and it was reignited in you. And it changed your outlook, didn't it, on everything, on your values and what was really important to you again.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Once you get re-hit by the Holy Spirit, it's just the most incredible feeling. And my mum's a very strong Christian as well. She only became a Christian since my dad died. Once you're a Christian, you just can't understand why everybody doesn't want to give it a try, because it's a real leap of faith. You can't question it too much. You just have to take the leap. And then these weird things happen and you just say, thank you, God. It's just like amazing. And then I now can't read enough about it. I just love reading stories and watching films about Christians and faith-led journeys and saints.
Which is amazing. And you're still running the business and God's still giving you that. And that's still thriving as well, isn't it?
It's still thriving. And I think one has to be really careful to always try and give everything up to God. And it's not easy being a Christian in the business world. I remember being a trustee for the Archbishop of York, and I did some work at Bishopthorpe Palace, and I loved it because every hour the bell rang and you'd have 1 minute to just say your prayers to God. And it was such a good grounding thing in the middle of the day. And I always think I should be brave enough maybe to do that with my work, just say once a day. But the nearest I've got to being a real Christian in the office is I went and I got a bottle of holy water from the Catholic Church opposite. And I went, right, everyone, let's thank God, let's sprinkle the office with holy water. And actually they loved it. I think once you get a bit brave about speaking out, people love it far more than you think. You think people are going to think you're weird, but they don't really.
And did that create a positive reaction, the holy water? How did people react? Did they think you'd gone a little bit mad?
Well, we had a new person who just started. She said, well, that's a first. She said, I've never worked in a business where I've been sprinkled with holy water on my first day.
It provided a lot of faith conversations.
Yeah, I think it did a bit. They all know. People know I'm not as brave sometimes as I should be about going out and evangelizing. I always think I should be a lot better. Well, I'm now doing this podcast, so maybe that's a great thing. But it's sometimes when you are brave, you suddenly realize that actually people are hungry for wanting to know more.
What did your husband think when he suggested the idea, why don't you go and start the business? Did he now look back and think, I knew you could do this? And how important is it to have someone, when you're an entrepreneur, that believes in you and says, I think you can do this? How critical was that to you?
Oh, I think it's really, really important, because you do often have confidence crisis and think you can't do it. And I think it's really important. I think also, I don't think people always think that in order to run a business, you have to be really tough and you have to be quite ruthless. I don't think that is the case at all. I think you can lead with kindness and love and giving other people a chance to be in control. Gavin, who runs my business, and Deborah, I trust them totally 100% to get on with it. And I'm not always questioning them or doubting them. I know sometimes we've had conversations where I've questioned things and maybe they've said, do you not think we're doing the right thing? I said, no, I'm not. I do question things sometimes, but I try and question it so that it's not looking like I think they're not doing a good job, but I'm just genuinely interested why that might have happened or whatever.
Well, and the other thing is, you're an entrepreneur, so you're coming up with ideas that you then bounce off them. And sometimes they say yes, and other times they say, no, you're crazy. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, spot on. And I have to know when they're crazy. One of my ideas was I thought we should have lots of kittens in the office. And they literally just thought I'd lost. I just said, why don't we just get some kittens and cats and just have them like running around the office? Wouldn't that just be a lovely thing? Anyway, that.
Yeah, I can understand why they threw that out the window.
Well, especially when it's a loft space in Camden with no outside space.
Amazing. Lara, we're coming down to land. You've obviously done a lot of life. A lot of people listening to this will be young gospel entrepreneurs. What would be some little nuggets that you would give to them? Obviously, the relational piece is really important. If you think you know something about someone, go with what you know because you were right. And that was really important. But are there any other things that you really think are really important for someone starting out?
I think to sometimes slow down a bit and just remember to ask for wisdom. Everyone has different gifts they ask for. I wish that I asked for wisdom more, and I wish that I prayed and asked God for things more. There's a lovely thing about basically God saying, you say, God, why did this happen? And why didn't that happen? And then God just quietly says, you never asked. I got up early one morning and rushed right into the day. That's so what I do. I had so much to accomplish that I didn't take time to pray. Problems just tumbled about me and heavier came each task. Why doesn't God help me? I wondered. He answered, you didn't ask. I wanted to see joy and beauty, but the day toiled on grey and bleak. I wondered why God didn't show me. He said, but you didn't seek. I tried to come into God's presence. I used all my keys at the lock. God gently and lovingly chided. My child, you didn't knock. I woke up early this morning and paused before entering the day. I had so much to accomplish that I had to take time to pray.
Great. Love it.
I love that one. And it's just so true. So often you just forget to see the beauty in the simplest things. And if one stops rushing, for me, that's the most challenging thing. And as a Christian, if you can just stop rushing and take time to hear people and listen to people and see things and pick up on things and use your intuition. I tend to be a bit like a bull in a china shop, and I have to really try hard with that one.
So what you do is you're saying basically God is as interested in your business as the spiritual side of your life because he's involved in all of life. And you wish you'd asked him for more wisdom and his Holy Spirit leadership in what you've done as running a business.
Exactly. And actually just taking the time to, I think we all think we're too busy. I haven't got time to do this. I haven't got time to do that. But actually having time to pray is probably the most important thing that we ever do, isn't it? Not that I've got to this stage yet, but by success and money and everything like that. And actually one has to remember that at the end of the day, it's all God's money.
Lara, it's been amazing conversation. We've come and gone a little bit. Hopefully everybody's heard what you said, but that's because you're in London and we're in the studio. But it's been an absolute pleasure to listen, to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Another episode of Gospel Entrepreneurs. I've been thrilled that Lara has joined us and what she's brought and her story. There's so much to learn there in seeking wisdom, slowing down, praying in the moment as things come into your business or things in what you do. And when you think it's all over, God will give you it back. When she did the tennis and then God gave it all back to her and more. It's just amazing the way God looks out for our lives. Thank you so much for joining with us today. This has been a joint partnership with UCB Gospel Entrepreneurs. Thanks for listening. God bless you.